Ladies and gentlemen, let us cast our gaze upon the unfolding drama within the sphere of women's professional basketball, for we are witnessing a spectacle so profoundly disorienting, so inherently fraught with conflict, that it demands our immediate and unwavering attention. We stand at a juncture where the lines between competition and personal animus, between the sanctity of player safety and the erratic enforcement of justice, have become irrevocably blurred. Consider, if you will, the extraordinary circumstance involving Brittney Griner and Aliyah Boston, a situation that has erupted into the public consciousness with the force of a thunderclap. This is not merely a fleeting moment of on-court friction. It is a tableau that encapsulates the current, turbulent state of the sport. It is relevant, undeniably so, because we are speaking of Aliyah Boston, a cornerstone of the next generation, and Brittney Griner, a figure who remains a dominant, relevant force within the WNBA hierarchy. We must dissect this entire affair because it is something that is currently consuming the discourse on social media, exploding into a cacophony of opinions and heated debates. Although the contest in question concluded only yesterday, and we find ourselves nearly a day removed from the visceral immediacy of the event, the reverberations are still being felt with undeniable intensity. I must offer a profound apology for the delay in bringing this analysis to you. I have fallen behind in the production of these video essays, and this is a topic that deserved a more immediate dissection. Before we descend into the labyrinth of this controversy, I must address you, the loyal viewers. If you are new to this assembly, I implore you to subscribe. We are, quite literally, engaged in a struggle of our own. We are fighting with every ounce of our digital strength to return to the heights we once occupied. We are battling to regain the summit of 57,000 subscribers or above. There was a time not so long ago when we stood proudly at 57.3 thousand, but we have weathered a storm, losing 11 souls in the last 48 hours alone. We are striving to claw our way back to the specific milestone of 57,215, the highest peak we have inhabited in months. So I ask for your support as we navigate these turbulent waters together. Now, let us turn our analytical lens to the matter at hand. For those who may be uninitiated or unaware of the specific transgression, Brittney Griner, in a moment that can only be described as a jarring breach of sporting decorum, made contact with Aliyah Boston's face. It was a brushback, a swipe that caught her directly in the eye, a visceral violation of personal space. The immediate aftermath has left a multitude of observers pondering a fundamental question. Why was this not an immediate ejection? And furthermore, does this transgression demand a suspension? To answer the first part of this inquiry, we must look at the optics of real-time officiating. In my considered opinion, the reason this did not result in an ejection during the contest itself is because, in the chaotic flurry of live action, there is just enough ambiguity to suggest that this might have been completely accidental. In the blink of an eye, the officials must determine intent, and there is a sliver of doubt, a shadow of uncertainty, that allows one to argue that this was an inadvertent motion. However, we must then ask the uncomfortable rhetorical question: does anyone in their heart of hearts truly believe it was accidental? No, absolutely not. The consensus among those with eyes to see is that absolutely nobody believes this was a mere mishap. Yet because that theoretical chance exists in the moment, because it is realistically a physical move that very well could occur within the kinetic flow of a basketball game, one cannot, in that specific instance, easily eject a player of Griner's stature. But this brings us to the far more pressing, far more consequential inquiry. Should there be a suspension for Brittney Griner now that the dust has settled? This is a fundamentally different question, one that removes the fog of war and relies on cold, hard analysis. For me, the answer is an unequivocal yes. The reason for this firm stance lies in the forensic examination of the footage. While in real time one might charitably chalk this up to an unintentional flail, the slow-motion truth tells a far darker story. Look at the positioning. The ball is nowhere near the vicinity of the contact. Griner makes absolutely no attempt to play the sphere. She is not within a meter of the ball, nor is the ball within a meter of her by the time she forcefully grasps at Aliyah-Boston's face. When the objective of the game, the ball, is entirely removed from the equation, and the physical force is directed solely at an opponent's visage, there can be no question about it. The act is intentional. To fully comprehend the gravity of this, one must be cognizant of the preamble to this violence. If you are aware of what transpired on the previous possession, the picture becomes crystal clear. Their arms had become tangled, a moment of physical friction that clearly sowed the seeds of resentment. This context transforms the incident from a random act into a calculated reprisal, and this leads us to a broader, more disturbing critique of the league in question, Unrivaled. We must consider the history of these two competitors going at one another, juxtaposed against the way Unrivaled has positioned itself as an organization. This is a league that has operated with an almost fastidious caution regarding player welfare. They have shown no hesitation in sitting players out for minor grievances, withholding them from competition if there is even a whisper of injury. They have been overly cautious with everything, prioritizing preservation over performance. So, when we are presented with a scenario where one player, for lack of a more elegant phrase, cheap shots another player, and suddenly that trademark caution evaporates, it raises a profound concern. For me, this inconsistency is not merely a lapse in judgment, it is a glaring ethical paradox. It is a concern because it suggests that the rules of engagement are fluid, dependent entirely on who is involved. And here we arrive at the uncomfortable truth that permeates the WNBA ecosystem. Nothing will likely be done because the victim is Aliyah-Boston. We must confront the reality that, in the eyes of the media and the league's unspoken hierarchy, Aliyah-Boston is viewed through a lens of proximity to Caitlin Clark. Among the WNBA media landscape, this renders her, quite tragically, as fair game. The sentiment has hardened, crystallizing around the notion that anyone associated with the Indiana Fever is a permissible target. Aliyah-Boston is fair game. Lexi Hull is fair game. Sophie Cunningham is fair game. There appears to be a systemic permission structure that allows opponents to go out and attempt to hurt an Indiana Fever player without fear of significant repercussion. Consider, if you will, the appalling incident involving Sydney Colson and J.C. Sheldon. Even Sydney Colson was treated as fair game when Sheldon launched herself into a reckless, dangerous maneuver. As Colson was picking up the ball, Sheldon jumped from behind, sliding through her knees in a tackle that was nothing short of grotesque. What J.C. Sheldon did to Sydney Colson would have been an immediate red card in the world of soccer had it been committed with the feet. It was a tackle from behind, a sly, perilous takedown that resulted in injury. And yet, the reaction? It was treated as fair game. It was laughed off because Sid Colson joined in on the joke. But the underlying reality is that a dangerous, red card-worthy tackle was permitted to stand as part of the rough-and-tumble narrative. This brings us to a hypothetical scenario that exposes the deep-seated hypocrisy at play. Imagine, if you will, the roles were reversed. If Aliyah-Boston had caught Brittney Griner with this same strike to the face, I fully and unreservedly believe that Boston would be suspended by the powers that be at Unrivaled. I believe it with every fiber of my being. But because we exist in the somewhat psychotic world of the WNBA cultural sphere, Fever players remain fair game. Whether that targeting comes from the commentators, whether it comes from the media, or whether it comes from fellow players, the standard is set. You are allowed to attack their characters. You are allowed to attack them as human beings. You are allowed to attack their physical appearance. You are permitted to attack their skill sets. I will not even use the mild term criticize, for it is an attack. You are allowed to attack where they are from, where they were born, and their personal views. Fever players are the designated targets of this era. Unfortunately, Unrivaled, despite its newness, appears to have inherited the DNA of the old WNBA media guard. Therefore, I predict with a heavy heart that nothing will be done about this Griner incident. Absolutely nothing. And while one might argue in a general sense that perhaps such a scrape isn't worthy of a suspension in a vacuum, context is king. When you consider that Unrivaled positions itself as this buddy-buddy league, a collaborative utopia where players don't even truly have to play, where you can simply pay to train, where the competitive stakes are ostensibly lower than a traditional sports league, the violence becomes even more jarring. At the end of the day, if this league is to pride itself on player safety, on a progressive approach to the athlete's well-being, then ignoring a retaliatory strike to the face is a fundamental contradiction. Let us be unequivocal. This was not a premeditated assault from days prior. Griner did not wake up that morning declaring she would go after Aliyah-Boston. It was not premeditated in the legal sense of long-term planning. However, it was premeditated from exactly 25 seconds earlier when their limbs became entangled. That was the moment the decision was made. It was a retaliation move. We have seen this before. We have witnessed retaliation moves when these specific players have clashed in the WNBA. There is a history here, a narrative arc of conflict that cannot be ignored. It is not just a small, insignificant rivalry. We have seen Brittney Griner swing elbows in the past. Now, to be intellectually honest, we must acknowledge that Aliyah-Boston does Aliyah-Boston things. When she executes a drop step, she keeps her arms high. And ironically, based on the strict letter of the law in basketball, an elbow to the face in that cylinder is often a perfectly legal maneuver. She is operating within her rights, within her space. There is nothing wrong with it in the rulebook, yet let us be very clear. She absolutely will hit someone with an elbow. It is a legal elbow to the face, but it is contact nonetheless. However, acknowledging Boston's physical style does not excuse the specific, non-basketball retaliation delivered by Griner. At the end of the day, the disparity in how these actions are adjudicated is the crux of the issue. I remain convinced that if the roles were reversed, a suspension would be swift and decisive. The fact that there is virtually no discussion of this suspension, and that the prevailing discourse is instead revolving around the grotesque question of did Aliyah-Boston deserve it, demonstrates just how profoundly broken this entire ecosystem is. It shows how messed up, for lack of a better term, the WNBA media landscape has become. Ironically, when it comes to Unrivaled, the situation might be even worse. This league, which promised something different, may end up being even more susceptible to these biases than the entity it seeks to complement. This glaring ethical paradox, this profound lack of clarity in justice and protection, creates a backdrop that is deeply unsettling for the true fan. It forces us to ask, is this a legitimate sporting endeavor with consistent rules, or is it a theater where the script is written by personal grievances and media narratives? The optics of ignoring such a flagrant act are, to put it mildly, less than ideal. It contributes to a perception that borders on the farcical. When a player can retaliate with a blow to the face, meters away from the ball, and the conversation is about whether the victim provoked it, we have lost our way. The strategic astuteness, or lack thereof, from the league in handling this could not be more critical. The court of public opinion is watching. The fans, the subscribers we are fighting so hard to regain, are watching. They see the double standards. They see the fair game treatment of the Fever players, and they are beginning to feel, I suspect, a sense of alienation. So anyway, That is the situation as it stands. It is a complex, emotionally charged, and ultimately frustrating state of affairs. I turn the floor over to you, lads and ladies. Let me know what you truly think in the comment section below. Do you believe that Brittney Griner, should be suspended for this act? Or do you fall into the camp that believes Aliyah somehow deserved this retribution? If you think the latter, I must say that is a genuinely crazy perspective, but it is what it is. That is the reality of the discourse we face. That brings us to the conclusion of this video. I thank you, as always, for your time and your attention. Please do not forget to like the video, leave your thoughts in the comments, and most importantly, subscribe. Help us in our fight to return to 57,215. Help us restore what was lost. Until next time.